Howdy and welcome back to the shop. We're wrapping up our little project here on our Onan generator. You're looking at its back end here. And I thought I'd talk today about sensors. So what I've got here, now one of the things with the deep sea control and even this cheap Chinese knockoff that I've got on this thing is you can configure them to run about any sensor you want. Now the genuine deep sea control, the later revisions of them have got a whole lot better methods of refinement on the sensors. But they come pre-programmed to use VDO gauges, Murphy gauges, every kind of gauge that's common in Europe. Well, this ain't Europe, boys. This here is Missouri. So we got shakeaways here. So what I use, or what I prefer to use, is standard Chevrolet sending units. Now this is it's just a Chevrolet temperature sensor. They use these in the incoming air temperature sensor. They use it for a coolant temperature sensor. The specs on these are really easy to find, the ohms versus temperature. So it's real easy to program that in. So what I've got here, I've got one in this rocker cover, which is surrounded by a swarm of spraying hot oil. So when this thing is running, you've got these spray bars here that's spraying oil down to cool the exhaust valves. Really slick. So this is fairly representative of oil temperature. I mean, it's going to be a little bit cooler than true oil temperature, but it's not going to be too far off of true oil temperature. And down here, I've got another one of those same sensors, and I just built a bracket here to put this sensor in the cooling air stream as the cooling air is blowing out of here to measure that cooling air temperature. And there are alarms that you can configure to make this to where if your cooling air or that other sensor, it gets too hot, it shuts her down and trips it out. So down here is our oil pressure sender, and I like to leave a manual gauge plumbed in as well. You know, I like my controller to have oil pressure that it can read, but I want a manual gauge. Just because I like to have a manual oil pressure gauge, because yeah, you can trust this and you have to trust it, but trust but verify. And it's plumbed in. I use some copper or NiComp brake line, and it's plumbed in. There just wasn't room from the port to mount this thing without it flopping into breeze. So this is securely mounted into a bracket. No big deal there. And before I forget, the temperature sensor part number, these are standards. TX3, Tango X-Ray 3, standard pressure sender, and that is Papa Sierra 154. Those are the sending units that I almost always use. I just like them. They're very robust, easy to come by. I mean, every parts house in the country has got these. Chevrolet used this thing for 30 years on their rigs. So I've got my Star Trek laptop tablet thing connected by USB cable over to my ChiCom Deep Sea, ChiCom copy of a Deep Sea, and we're fixing to open a configuration suite. Now, this cheap ChiCom copy works with the genuine configuration suite with an asterisk or two. The cheap copy is very, very outdated, as in you don't have all the nearly the functionality of the newest revision of the 6120. The DSE 6120 Mark III, I think, is where they're at now. Has got a lot better features and is a little bit more polished on the user controls. So we'll look at this. Okay, so we're going to read configuration for module. Okay, so we got options. Oop, that's wrong. Inputs. Oil pressure. So you can edit in your oil pressure settings, and you just drag and click these little dots, and that gives you your pressures versus your ohms of resistance. And you got to kind of tweak around on them a little bit. I mean, you're going to have a little bit of resistance in your wire, and you're going to have a little bit of resistance in connectors. But, you know, we're not building a project for NASA. We're not sending this thing to French Indochina on a trans-Siberian expedition. This is a simple little 2-cylinder generator. So close enough is close enough. And coolant temperature. Same thing with coolant temperature. Now, one of the things that I don't like about this revision that the later revisions are much better with is this is Missouri. We still use Dungarees Frankenstein. We don't use Celsiuses or anything like that. And this thing, the old one, only goes from 0 to 480 ohms, which doesn't work very good with the temperature range of the TX3 Chevrolet temperature senders. So it is what it is. You know, you've got a flexible sensor. I'm using that one for my, back up. I'm using the flexible sensor for oil temperature, digital inputs, timers, generator. One of the neat things about the 6120 is you do not have to have a separate mag pickup for the controller. The controller will run off of the generator end for frequency. You know, so there's all your frequency alarms. You can put current current sensing donuts on these. You got maintenance, you got schedulers, you got all kinds of stuff over here. It just is, you know, it's a pretty good all around system. Now let me get out of this one. Oh, and one of the neat things about this is just like on a Kohler, you can go to a job site, plug your computer into it, and you can download all of the history, just read from module, and you can export this history, all of your histories, and save it. Another thing that's neat about this, if you've got the battery hooked up, you can hit the SCADA, or SCADA, I don't even know what that is, but that gives you basically a virtual controller, and it also shows you your inputs. You know, there's your e-stop switch. You've got, that'd be like a 2-wire start. You've got a lamp test button. You can program these digital inputs to do what you want them to. There's your outputs. You got fuel relay, start relay, all of that stuff. You can even hook up a blinky light or an alarm for a common warning light. There's your event log. Now, these don't have a very good event log, but you can export it. The new revision has a much better event log. Let's see, open configuration. No, I don't want to save anything. Onan. Go look at Mr. Jones's. This is another one that I did that worked out really nicely. And this was on a Mark III. Come on, baby. So here's the, this This is the Mark II or Mark III. Yep, Mark III, 6120 Mark III. Inputs, analog inputs, flex sensor A, nope. We want analog inputs, configuration, oil sensor, temperature sensor, analog input A. So there's our curve on this one. That's pressure and PSI. So you can see we've got a much better range on stuff for our ohms, which the oil pressure, come on baby, coolant temperature. Yeah, see there's our ohm range that you can program in for, and I did program this one in. So this is the same TX3, standard TX3 Chevrolet sending unit, and I programmed this in off of, I just downloaded a temperature versus resistance chart off of out of a book, and just simply programmed this thing in. And you'll notice that this one actually reads in degrees Fahrenheit. So, you know, we go from 307 degrees down to about 60 degrees, maybe 78, 80 degrees. You can just click that and find out. 77 degrees. So you've got a much wider range. The other one only went to like 4 or maybe 450 ohms. This one goes out to 2,800 ohms. So there's that one. Now we can go to event log down here. Oh, no, that's still reading the SCADA off of the other one. But it's just easier on the newer ones than the old ones. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed this little overview. This isn't the be all end all. I am not an expert on deep sea electronics. It is a very good option as far as if you've got to put a new controller on an old machine. There are a lot of really good generators that are still out there that may be 35, maybe even 50 years old. The technology of engines has not changed, has not really improved that greatly. The technology of a generator end has really not improved all that greatly in a lot of years, a lot of decades actually. And it is insanely wasteful to throw away old equipment just because its controls are outdated, or you need it to carry a tighter frequency range or a tighter voltage range. That's not only wasteful, it's just stupid. And if you're a green bean, it's environmentally unfriendly to waste something and scrap it rather than to repair it. So there's my rant. Rant over. Till we meet again, y'all drive safe, watch for deer.